much for coming here and being on the podcast. I'm seriously so delighted that you're joining us.
My God, this is the joy of my life. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, yeah, this is like a dream come true. I'm so delighted that you're here. And the timing couldn't be more perfect because your book and your deck are about to come out. And we're going to talk about that today on the podcast because I'm just so excited for you. I'm so excited for the world that your book, Tarot for the Wild Soul, is coming out, is going to be available. And then it's coming out with this like insanely gorgeous deck, the Soul Tarot deck. And I can be a little bit snobby sometimes about decks. Like I have my preferences.
Yes.
You know, I like what I like, and everything that I've seen, all of the imagery, it is so beautiful.
Thank you.
It's so soulful. I mean, everything you do is so soulful. So
Thank you.
I'm just so excited that everyone gets to experience this. So before we begin, I'm going to read your official bio so people know who you are and who I'm talking to, and then we're going to launch in. Okay. Lindsay Mack is an intuitive tarot teacher, author, podcast host, death doula, and the founder of Tarot for the Wild Soul. Through the beloved workshops, retreats, and online tarot courses, Lindsay has had the profound honor of teaching soul tarot to many tens of thousands of students from all around the world. As a queer, neurodivergent, and now joyful survivor of childhood abuse, living with complex PTSD and chronic pain, Lindsay is passionately dedicated to honoring and helping to bring space, light, and healing to those who are experiencing mental, emotional, or physical suffering. Their first book, Tarot for the Wild Soul, and tarot deck, the Soul Tarot Deck, will be released on May 19th of this month by Running Press. So, Lindsay, I can't even remember the first time I heard about you. It was before I even met you, and I ended up meeting you at a gathering. But then I put two and two together who I was talking to. I was like, it's the Lindsay Mack. But I mean, I know so many people who have been listening to your intuitive readings now for years and years and years, like every month religiously tuning in. You are such a clear channel, and not only do you receive so much and share so much with us, but you do it in a way where like it really meets people. Like a lot of people talk about being like trauma informed and trauma aware, but you embody that. And you like live in that and sit inside of that in a way that is just, it's always felt so comforting for me. I've always felt so seen. And I know that that's a huge reason why, yeah, so many of my dearest friends just have adored you for so long and continue to be devotees of your work. And so I want to say thank you for that. I know that we in particular, we met at this gathering like 10 years ago or something. And then we reconnected after our daughters were born, which was a really big deal. We were kind of on a very similar wave because they were born about a month apart. And I know that, in those early times, just exchanging emails with you was just so helpful for me. It just felt so grounding. I felt less alone. And I've just been like really honored to be in deeper connection with you over these past few years.
Oh, Asia, I mean, I write back at you 1,000 times over with regard to everything that you shared. It's a gift and a blessing to know you. It was, and God bless you for your willingness. I just cold emailed you. And I was like, hi, I know we're both in early postpartum. This is a nightmare. How are you doing? And I remember also like right around the time where I sent that email, like economically things were really shaky. And I was like, is it just me?
I was like, no.
What are we doing? How are we doing? Like, it was so, you were so like warm and lovely and just like, hi. It meant the world to me. It was such an important lifeline, even just those emails in those days. Same. I mean, when I came up to you at that gathering, I was a fan. So it means a lot to hear that from you, and your words mean so much to me. Just thank you so much for all that you had to say about the podcast and my approach. It's incredibly meaningful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just my joy. And I think we all need mirrors like this each other, you know, and I think that that's so much of too what we are doing in our work, is just being like that benevolent mirror so folks can see themselves clearly. And
I agree.
yeah, and you're so good at that. So
Thank you.
let's dive into some of the questions I have for you here today. We're going to just see where we go, but this is an exciting moment. When this podcast comes out, it's going to be like right as your book is coming out. So
So
there's going
excited.
to be a lot of momentum around this, and I'm super excited for you. So the
Oh,
book is called Tarot for the Wild Soul, and your body
yes.
of work as a whole is called Tarot for the Wild Soul. And so, some
Yes.
folks might be really new to you, so I'm
Hmm.
curious, what does it mean to you to have a wild soul? And this might have changed over the years. Like I know when we have like long-term businesses, like things like this, our conceptions, our frameworks change.
Yeah.
But like from where you are right now, like what does it mean to you to have a wild soul? And like how do you know if maybe you've lost touch with yours, or if like, or really, I think more even better, how do you know when you are in touch with it?
I love that question. So it's useful for me to meditate on that. What does it mean for me today? Well, first and foremost, I think because, and I know you'll understand this, you're so deeply in touch with this too. Your work encompasses the wild so profoundly and beautifully. Um, I think that to aim to be in connection and contact with our wild soul, to me, is to be in touch with and in contact with the real essence of you, letting it be as it is, right?
Mm.
And I think about it, I think about the concept, which I know you're familiar with, of rewilding, which is a kind of a form of ecological restoration where humans do as little as possible, where we're looking at an area in nature that's been over harvested, overrun, which I don't know that we can get away with. Like the idea of purity, I think, is something that we sometimes connect with wildness. And I'd love to gently lift the mantle of pressure off of that, because for nature, it might be pollution, it might be dams, it might be over insertion. But for human beings, there's colonialism, and there's white supremacy, and there's ableism, and there's lots of systemic harms that, even if someone is sitting there thinking, well, like, oh, those things don't affect me personally, gently, they do. They do affect all of us, even those of us with privilege. So I think the things that can be the dikes and dams around our wild soul are sometimes it can be so well-meaning, subtle, or really overt, over insertions from caretakers, from society, from community, that invited you to not trust yourself, that invited you to put your intuition aside, parts of your identity, parts of who you are that were never really given a chance to flower open in one way or another. I think to be in connection with whatever our wild soul means also means that if you're a lilac, you let yourself be that and you don't try to be a sequoia. Or if you're moss, you don't feel the pressure to have to be anything else. We're just knowing that we change, right, over this time in life. Really a gradual willingness to be aware what was placed in the garden of my life by me, by others, maybe through no fault of anyone. What is it to devote and dedicate ourselves to the lifelong work of gently, kind of in terms of rewilding, noticing where there's been an over intervention, gently removing it, and then letting that area take itself back. So to me, I think it probably would have given you a different answer like years before, but to me, I think that's what I connect with now.
Hmm. Well, what you shared right now speaks so much to me, Lindsay. It's like
Mm.
there's this reclamation of the word wild even that you're doing in the wholeness of this description that like I mean wildness is like essential self, that it is like the essential wholeness that can actually never be changed. It can just be covered and uncovered.
That's
And
right.
I absolutely love the way in which you tie this into the intuitive work that you do, that so much of this is about returning to just our essential selves. Like if you're a
Mm-hmm.
lilac, be a lilac. If you're a
Mm-hmm.
sequoia, be a sequoia. And there's so much liberation in that at the same time that we're, and I love that you named this, divorcing it from the whole purity culture ideal of what wild is or wilderness is, and all the
Yeah.
ways in which we just subconsciously start putting those pressures on ourselves, even on our journeys of healing and self-discovery and self-acceptance, that like somehow then it has to be perfect, or we have to get to this place where we're
Yeah.
always in alignment with ourselves, never making mistakes,
Yeah.
always able to hear our intuition clearly, like whatever that is, but that's not the wild soul.
I don't
And
think so. Yeah, I agree.
yeah, especially
Yeah.
not being in a in a human body. It's
Yeah,
just
like
not how it works.
yes, and I think like I also want to say that I think sometimes when folks who've been in their practice for a while speak about this, like sometimes I don't know, for me, I don't know, maybe this is just the way my brain works. Like I just also want to name like I am a student of this craft too, right? Like I'm still noting where ableism lives in me. I'm still aware of, like, I'm still actively working on things that happened in my childhood, like patterns, and working through stuff like invitations into projection around what my child is going through. Like being like, that's something you went through. Like, where's that coming
Yeah.
from? And like, this is day one stuff, of course, but stuff that I don't know, somewhere in me, I thought like, maybe I've evolved beyond that. And I'm like, no, 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 no. So I'm still very much on the path as well.
Well, I feel like you are like to me, one thing that makes you such a role model is the fact
Mhm.
that you are willing to be honest about being in process. And
Yes.
this is just, it's true for everyone. It's true for all of us. I've said this
Yeah.
before with what I teach. I'm like, I teach what I need to
Me
hear. That's what I teach. I teach what I'm learning right now. I'm
too.
teaching what I need to hear and understand and go deeper into. And I think that it's so, in some ways, it's so empowering to hear folks who are, holding space or in the craft or whatever it is, speaking honestly about the fact that, yeah,
Yeah.
we're in process. That's a lifelong thing. Like
Yes, it is.
that only ends when we die. And so
Yes.
we'll be doing it until that point, and like
Yes,
so
absolutely.
it's so important to name, and I feel like it dovetails so, not dovetails, I mean it's so interwoven with the way that you approach tarot and intuition in general, but tarot in particular, how, for most of my life working and hearing about tarot from the time I first got my first deck when I was like 14 or something, right?
Mhm.
Everything that we hear about the tarot is like predictive. It's like you
Yeah.
get your tarot deck to find out, like, do they like me or do they not like me, or
Of
whatever it
course.
is. Of
Yeah.
course, it's like we desire that, right? We're like so
Yes.
human. It's such a human thing to want to know and predict the future. And that a lot of people have had the experience, myself included, of that like sort of continually falling flat. It's like it's almost like the vibrancy that's possible with the cards doesn't come through when we're coming at it from that model. And so you have a very explicitly non-predictive model with tarot,
Yeah.
which I love, and it feels so liberating to me. Like the way you talk about tarot is my favorite. This is why I'm so excited for everyone to have your book.
Aw.
And so I'm curious, like, how do you help people shift away from using tarot to find out what's going to happen to using
Mhm.
it to remember like who they are?
I, first of all, again, honored, love you, right back at you. That's number one. Number two, so I think that for me, when I started reading similar age, got like my first deck at 12 or 13, it was a very straightforward thing for me. Because I think when you start reading at such a young age, it's really very easy to see where the overcultural kind of wave of the way we talk about tarot, in quotes, with all due respect to the thought leaders and teachers who came before me, because they had, I think, a lot harder of a path than I did, it just completely falls flat. It just totally falls flat, right? There's no, when you're 12 or 13, there's so much of the definitions mean absolutely nothing to you. Like, justice is always talked about like court cases and like, maybe, I guess, for some 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds, they're dealing with that. But for most of us, they're not. So it was really easy for me to see very early. It's not even like it's a wrong, right. It just, unless I think you are honoring here some cultural contexts, like Romani tarot readers who have a closed practice that is rooted in future telling, potentially, depending on the practice. I'm not speaking for all Romani tarot readers, but have a closed practice that is rooted in cartomancy, where I think there is more ability or more gifts or more inherited wisdom with regard to that. But for most of us, that's not our medicine. And for most of us, if we're talking about consistency, which is very helpful to the nervous system, tarot just doesn't do it. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't do it. It's not that the problem with ascribing it to prediction is that it makes the user feel that they've done something wrong. If they got a card that feels like it ripped the rug out from under them, and maybe it's worse, maybe it's not as bad, maybe it's just the same, they can feel like their spirit helpers are punking them. Mm-hmm. Their spirit helpers are like tricking them, which is a massive betrayal, especially when we're so vulnerable going to the stack with our So for me, the way that I help people is by just first and foremost acknowledging with immense respect and gentleness for me. And I think for a great many of us, it's never worked. Mm-hmm. Just doesn't work, right? Totally acknowledging there are some people with gifts, again, with like inherited practices for whom it does work. And I think even for those folks, they deserve on certain days for certain readings to know that sometimes it just doesn't necessarily flow in that direction, right? So then we have to think about, well, like what else? Like, why else would we use this tool? And to me, knowing that I don't speak for everyone, like I've never really seen much in the way of evidence that the future is fixed. Like I think the power and empowerment that we have as human beings is so enormous to be able to influence and move, move things with regard to taking action, doing things. So I think the tarot is incredible because when we do have agency, it can provide that clarity. And when we don't, it can provide nourishment and scaffolding to say, we don't have the ability to move, but here's what might be possible. Here's an anchor. Here's something that could hold you in this moment where you don't really have much in the way of choice, but you can come home still to this moment. And I don't know where that it probably has a lot to do with my own experiences, how I was raised, that I didn't have a lot of choice and had to deal with a lot of very impossible and completely, unfair and unforgiving situations as a young person, which then continued into young adulthood. And now I'm still dealing with, because I'm a person on this earth and I don't have choice about some things, right? So it's a very helpful tool, no matter what, to be able to come home to what is, what's possible, what might be. But yeah, it really does fall flat. And I think the model of prediction that all of us kind of know as being just the gold standard of how tarot is used. First, we have to acknowledge that that comes from appropriation. And that's, for those of us who are practicing it that way, I'm not accusing anybody of appropriating. It's just the system of appropriation that happened with Romani tarot readers of the day who weren't given their due. And if anybody wants more information about that, I highly recommend the Romanistan podcast and the work of Yasmina Von Thiel and Paulina Stevens, who are incredible and are doing so much education about that. We didn't know. Now we do. We just have more information. So there is some awareness of the fact that because it's not our medicine, it doesn't work for a lot of us. So there's that. And that's amazing because we can drop it, right? There's a totally another way to work with these cards. And two, I think there was a really nice attempt to try to get everybody reading with ease, which is why there's such shorthand. It's like cups are about love, right? Pentacles are about money. It's just what everybody, it's the automatic of what everybody like needs and wants. And like, how can we help? How can we shorthand it? So I see the benefit in that. It like completely does not work.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work like at all. And I wish it did. I mean, God, like you, I mean, I was like, oh my God, like I've got it made. This is going to like tell me what's up. Like, come on, so again, this is not a call out. It's a point of empathy and solidarity. Like I wanted that discovered, like this doesn't work for anyone and is super inconsistent and unreliable. And so my approach to tarot, which is called Soul Tarot, is just rooted in curiosity about what might happen if you drop that and you open to what might be.
It reminds me of something I wrote when I wrote a blurb for your book after I read it.
Thank you so much, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't remember the exact wording, but it was what I wanted to express was that like this way of working with the tarot is meeting where we're at now as a collective. It's like the way you present it, it's meeting where we are at in an emergent way in the collective. And it's almost this level too, where it's like, what would we even do if we know the future? I mean, like really, like what would you actually even do with that? Like we don't even point. Have the ability to even like use that in a useful way where we're so, I mean, bless our hearts. It's like we grew up in such intense times that like the desire to want to control is just so big and it's inside all of us, it just is part of it. And so what would really, how would that be helpful to even know that? But what is helpful is getting that anchor, as you call it, which I want to go to that next, but getting that like anchor point or that point where you can like see and understand where you're at, understand like what energies are moving through you right now, what you're being asked to respond to in terms of what is present. Like I think about when I was pregnant, I kept picking the tower card. It was like, oops, all towers. Like, and I remember being like, no, like that was kind of my energy around it. And I look back on it, I'm like, and it was one tower after another for me, 100% the entire experience, pregnancy, birth, postpartum for me, many, many towers falling.
Only tower.
Yeah. And
same.
And like, I look back on, I'm like, I was in such a fear place too, where I was like, cannot look at that right now. But I'm like, what if I had been able to just meet it as like, hey babe, like this is actually already where you're at right now. And like at the time I just wasn't able to like actually embrace that or adjust to that or acknowledge that inside of myself. But what if I had been able to be like, babe, this is already happening. And I'm like literally just coming up to like help you so that you don't feel so alone or like this catastrophe is just happening upon you, but that like that there's like possibility here within how you respond to this present moment and how you sit with yourself. And I just think that, what you teach is exactly that. And so I want to touch on this idea of the anchor card because you brought it up before, and I just love it because while you were talking about the simplicity, how we were like handed sort of these super simplistic definitions of the cards, as you were talking, I was thinking, oh, what we need is not super simplistic definitions of the card. We need simpler practices for
Yeah.
working with them so that we can
Yeah.
receive the complexity of the messages inside of the card. So tell us more about what this practice of the anchor card is.
Yes. So I think people know this because I think you're going to share it, but the essence of the practice that I developed and teach, and this will connect to the question, is Soul Tarot, which is a non-predictive, trauma-informed, trauma-sensitive, heart-led, inclusive way of approaching the cards in a way that we aim to do it for the present moment. We aim to do it with compassion, with common sense, with critical thoughtfulness. And tarot anchoring or anchor cards, which is, I mean, lots of people refer to tarot as an anchor, but the specificity of the practice of anchor cards as I teach it came from a moment very similar to what you're describing, where I kept pulling the same card over and over and over again, and I couldn't find any medicine in it. I couldn't find any peace in it. I was not able to find any relief in that. And it was a very specific moment in time where, like, my deck couldn't have given me anything that would have helped. You know, it was like acknowledgments of the moment I found myself in were very activating. I didn't believe the cards that promised, like, there's something on the other side of this that will be peaceful, when there were any that were somewhat spiky. It was an enormous response. And it was really heartbreaking because it was the first situation that I felt like I couldn't go to my deck without feeling activated, when it's always a refuge for me. So, yeah, I just was kind of like, well, there are no rules. I can do whatever I want. So I thought I definitely don't need to know what I'm in, because I know I don't need to know, you know, there are alternative questions that are usually helpful. They were not. So the practice and the essence of tarot cards is that you get to pick the card that you want to pull closer to you in the moment that you need it. So if you know you're in a tower, or you see the tower, I'll provide two examples actually. So example number one is you're in just a suspended moment in time where everything is just intense. It's stressful, usually kind of some similar ingredients for many people who might choose to do this are like, we don't know what's going to happen, and in a very big and suspended and lengthy way. Our nervous systems are, it's so intense to be like, I have no idea what this is going to be. So let's just say we want the Sun card. Let's just say we want the Star card. Let's say we want the Empress. Let's say we want the Emperor. Like, it really doesn't matter what card you want. But you pick it, you put it in front of you, and you can do a couple of things with it. One, you can just start drawing in associations. If you're looking at the way we might use an anchor, and this is anecdotal on my part, but in a psychological way, if we're using a photo or a poem or a memory of someone, we're doing the stitching work, the tapestry work to anchor that in when we're not activated. So it's one of those things where if we really love the Star card, and if we want to remember in a difficult time, there's no winter without spring. Not possible. So no matter how bad this is, no matter how much my brain is saying, we're cooked, this is it, we're never done, even if we might not be there to see it, but there's never a finish point, right? So we might put that in front of us, and then we might notice a poem that reminds us of that, a song. We might remember a place in nature. I talk about this in the book, but Windy Ridge up on Mount St. Helens, which is the blast zone where the eruption occurred, it's a place I go to all the time when I think, well, we're never going to get through this. I'm like, well, that landscape is living proof that you can hold both. So how can you be different? You're not that special, you know? You can't be more special than that land. Like that helps me. So remembering that, sometimes even like just notes on my phone, like so simple, where I can find it outside of the practice of reading. I don't have to go to my deck and be hit with a surprise. I can work with just memory anchor points, little lighthouses, constellations of them. The other way that we can work with something like that is, let's say we pull the star for an anchor. We can stitch together deeper questions that are wrapped around that card. So we can say for the star, how can I connect more fully with this card in this moment of my life? And we can pull a card for that. How can I draw upon the greatest degree of support from this card right now? We can pull a card for that. So we're controlling the pull, but letting it blossom within those conditions. And I find that when our nervous systems, for one reason or another, don't have our normal degree of capacity to cope with any old card, this is a really respectful and lovely and expansive way of connecting. So that's kind of option one. And the other option that we might work with might be that we kind of do something similar with the card that you pulled. So like, let's say we pull the Tower over and over and over and over again. And I'm sure you did this, Asia, but for anybody else who might be out there who might be like, oh my God, I'm in the exact same situation. It can be really helpful to ask questions of the card and just be like, why do you keep coming up? Exactly. And I'm also, this is really, I don't know, potentially controversial for some. I've never actually faced controversy for it. It's a soft controversy. It's very hyperbolic, but I really believe in the power and the medicine of just pulling a card out of the deck. That is, you're getting it 1,000 times. The way that I look at it is like, okay, like I know you're here. What I need to know is how to deal with what you're bringing. Mm-hmm. So I'm not interested in, it's not actually all that useful to see you. So like, thank you. I'm not bypassing it, but I'm going to like put you in a drawer for now. And then I kind of make a deal with my guides and I'm like, you have to figure out a different way to tell me what you're telling me. Mm-hmm. There are other like little tweaks that you can do too. Like if I feel like I'm in a moment of like really being in the intense kind of tractor beam of a card, sometimes I'll only work with minors and court cards because we don't usually have to surrender to a minor and a court card in the same way we do a major. So all kinds of like little tweaky things to feel like in this moment when I'm just like in tower, on top of tower, on top of tower, I have some agency here. So that's the structure.
Well, that was exactly the word I was going to use too. And just hearing the whole structure is agency. It's like actually giving people agency through working with the cards instead of feeling like it's yet another system that is actually like stripping away agency or is like controlling their fate or any of those things. It's like the way that these models work is you're actually giving people agency again within this practice that is meant to help you. It's meant to be supportive for you.
Yes.
And that it's possible for it to be supportive no matter what card you pull, because within this framework, it's like, you have the agency. Like, you only work with certain decks or suites or, put away that card that keeps showing up. And all of that brings us deeper into relationship with ourselves, which is really the point, which is the heart of all of this is like reconnecting to our essential selves. And I think you just touched on this in what we were talking about, but like, I love, because I had this question for you of like, this idea of the card that keeps coming back, and, and how like sometimes what we need to do is actually stop hyperfixating or focusing on that one thing and like expand the gaze a little bit wider and be like, what's surrounding this? Who can come help me with this? And I think we can definitely get that hyper-focused sort of vibe going on, and then it can disrupt our ability to receive the nourishment that is there for us. So I'm curious how you think this fits into, because I know a lot of the community that surrounds my work and the community that surrounds your work are people who feel really deeply and have been through a lot in their lives and have often been told like that their deep feeling, their emotionality, their sensitivity, their neurodivergence, whatever it is, that it's a problem. And there's, I see for a lot of folks, this sort of rupture that's happened where there's a tendency to distrust like their own perception. And that this can come up for people when you're like, okay, when I'm like going like off book or like off guidebook and I'm just trying to like receive for myself, like how do I trust what I'm perceiving, especially, and this question comes up like all the time, Lindsay, like if I could pick the number one question that people ask me, it would probably be this, is how do I tell the difference between intuition and like that brain voice, that sort of like fear-based brain voice. And so this is a kind of a multifaceted question, but yeah, what would you say to someone who is like, how do I trust my perception and how do I know that this is coming from this deeper place of intuition and not like I'm just being led, down this path that's my brain being very scared?
Oh my God. I mean, this is the question. And I know, and I appreciate your trusting me with it, because I know you do get asked this and you answer it really beautifully. And I think a lot of what I have to share is very similar to how you probably answer it to your students and to the folks that you work with. Okay. So one of the ways that the mind and intuition behave and communicate totally differently from one another. Totally differently. That we can trust. And I try really hard for the most part to be super transparent. Like I am no all-knowing person. I am not the end-all be-all on what your intuition is, what your guides sound like. If you even work with guides, because we can be intuitive without any kind of belief system in anything larger than us or nature or whatever, right? But I believe that the core of the inner voice is one that guides drop into rather than it being ruled by them. And it's the same cadence both ways. It'll just take on different amplifications depending on what we choose to work with. If you're worried about, is this true or not, chances are there's something to the message you're getting and the brain might be really scared about it. In general, I find that if something is admonishing, annoyed, angry, critical, a should, a you ought to, if it feels like a warning, an omen, if there's an undercurrent of emergence, if it's telling you have to do something immediately, it's your brain every single time. It was really interesting, actually, in like just the gentlest content warning for anybody who just like doesn't want to hear. I'll keep it like super light, like anything at all about like emergency medical situations, but had a situation after I gave birth where I had to actually call an ambulance. And it was an emergency situation. And I remember while I was like on the floor tuning in and being like, am I going to be okay? Like, what do I do? And the voice was it was like, you just need to call 911. Like, you need to call 911. Even that was different than like the siren that my brain was putting out there. Like my guides were like, oh yeah, you got to go to the hospital. But like also it wasn't a scream. It was really different, right? So everyone is different, right? I don't speak for everybody, but generally speaking, if we're talking about intuition, our guides, and this is any beloved figure, any beloved entity, energy out there who just loves you, holds you. It's an unconditionally loving chorus of support. You don't owe anything to this chorus, technically speaking. We kind of do just by being citizens of the world, but also they're not holding any accounts. It's not love with an agenda. They just want to help, but you're in charge of your life. So I have often found that guides suggest, they invite, they welcome. Almost always my guides, what they have to say is far gentler and more expansive, even in difficult times, than what my brain says. So it's tricky. It's a lifelong sense of teasing out. I've actually started to accept it as just a part of the life, like just being like, oh, this doesn't end. It just keeps going. It just keeps spiraling. So that's one of the ways. The thing for anybody who's like, oh my God, how can I trust? How can I trust? Two things I would say. In my experience, the spirit realm or the other side of the veil is kind of like refreshingly clear, in that if you say you don't want something, they'll actually listen to you. Like they'll go away. And if you say you want more, you'll get more. So I think that before we tune in and read, all that really is required for any kind of clarity or filtration system is just, I want to hear from any energy that has my highest and best in mind today. So it's just stating what you're available for. And by doing that, I think we state very clearly what we're not available for. And so when we do that, I like to really think of that as, I've said it, I've named it in one way or another. And then it's about letting yourself be in the repetition of practice. The more you do it, the more you will really begin to see. I think this is like it feels kind of floppy. I don't know if this is anything. I'll put it down and I'll see if this comes back to me. But the other thing that helps me is when I remember that nature really adores me and I'm chosen, and my guides really adore me, and they want to, just like I think bodies try their best to get to a state of equilibrium, and just like plants will do their best in the environment. Like I look at life in the world and the proliferation of any plant, any mycelium, anything. And I think, well, the essence of evolution and growth is to expand and to flower, and in some cases to die. But if I'm asking for help, I really do believe that there is a generous universe that wants me to know what's important for me to know. And sometimes that can get really tricky when what we want to know lines up with what we hear. When it's like we want to get a certain kind of message and we do, it's very vulnerable to trust that. Everything stands to want to support you in being in alignment with your intuition and with helpful, growthful information. Not only because it helps you, but because it helps on the planet. It helps everybody. So there's something that I know you're familiar with, because I'm assuming you've read The Way with the Way of the Rose. Yeah, I really appreciate, I'm not a religious person, but as an ex-Catholic, I really was raised praying to Mary and still really enjoy that practice. And I like that Perdita Finn and Clark Strand speak to praying to Mary as not just one religious act, but like a whole universe of practice that's been whittled down and kind of co-opted by this religion. But they say, like any mother, Mary really wants you to have what you'd like. So they talk a lot about how, like, don't just pray to Mary for what you need, really pray to her for what you like. And I like to put that on my tarot deck too. I'm like, I want to believe that you want me to have more than just the bare minimum. I don't know if that helps or makes sense, but that's what I got.
I absolutely love that. And everything you said was like literally the word in my head was like helpful. This is so helpful.
Oh,
and like this, yeah, so many gems in there. And especially, yeah, this overarching framework of like, your guides, these forces that support you, like they want you to flourish. They want
Yes,
you to
they
connect to your
do.
intuition. They want you to get the message. Like there's
Yes.
actually so much that's working for you. And I love too that you mentioned like this is a lifelong practice. And I know this is something like we have talked about together and then we touch in a little bit on your podcast, but this idea that like things are actually always changing in your intuitive life, and you know you have a course, intuition as a spiral, or intuition as a spiral.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious to drop into this next because I think the sort of the more life experience you have and the older you get, the more you realize, oh, like nothing is linear. Like when I was in my 20s, I thought, okay, you get more and more and more intuitive, and it's just like it just
Yes.
expands, and like, you know, you just have more access and it gets easier and easier. And then you go through life and you experience more. You have a child, you know, whatever it
Yeah.
is, and you're like, oh no, this is not nearly so linear. And so I was curious if you could speak to, yeah, just your experience of intuition as a
Mhm.
spiral, and if you feel like it, if you want to speak to the experience in particular of becoming a parent, because I know that's
Mm.
been huge for me, and I know for a lot of folks in my audience, that's been a huge threshold and change, and often it's a change that then it's not talked about the ways in which this does affect like our
Yes.
intuition, our practice. I mean, every aspect of our life.
Yes. I'm honored to share and love being in conversation with you about this. Always. We talked about this. Your interview with me is coming out, I believe, when this drops, it will either be coming out around the same time or very soon. Um, yes. Intuition, like all things, is a spiral, I think, in that we do get to these places where there is a big stretch of awareness where I think we do reach these points where we're like, wow, like I have come so far. Like there's so much to be gained here. I've learned so much. I have access to this part of me. And then inevitably something happens in your life and you keep going. And I think spiral is really helpful because that is the symbol that has helped me most as a trauma survivor. Because often with trauma, it makes you feel like you're going back into something, which is devastating. It certainly was for me. And that idea of like, oh, it's impossible. You can't go back no matter what. You're only going forward, only growing, only learning, because that's also what we see everywhere around us. So, how can we be different? That is very helpful for me to come back to. Being, becoming a mother, man. I mean, I think that I have a teacher who I don't work with as much anymore, named Michelle, who has just been so helpful to me because she really understands the intersection of biochemistry and intuition, and how when you have a very, very, very loud brain, it can, which I do, it can be really challenging to hear, perceive, understand your intuition, much less to trust it. Um, so I could talk about this forever, but here are some of the things that I think motherhood has given me with regard to my intuition. Motherhood has made my brain noise louder. It
Mhm.
has made it more difficult, I would say, in general, to connect to my intuition. And it's sort of um, made the impact of the intuitive channeling I do feel more middling right now because there's so little space on my nervous system to actually let it land. But paradoxically, that has caused me to like look more fully into support. Like I'm in the process of like a giant multifaceted like blood work journey right now to be like, what in the fuck is going on? Sorry to curse with all of this cortisol, adrenals, hormones. Oh my goodness. Um, it's made it harder to connect. It's made it harder to trust, I would say. And yet it has really expanded my capacity to know things in a way that I didn't have before I became a mother. It's a little bit less about tuning in and feeling in and listening, and more about there's a shorthand now where I'm like, okay, I think I know enough to know if my brain's over here, I can just kind of quickly touch base. Okay, I have a sense of the direction. I'll go with that. And then there's a little bit more of a shorthand. There's a little bit more. And when I can actually let myself get quiet and have the space, it's so much more of a refreshing process than I think it was even before. So there's you're catching me at a moment with my motherhood journey. I think a year ago, I might have told you something different. Now my child's 4, and there's more issues now for me that are cropping up just with perimenopause and everything, where it feels my guides are still coming through, but the chemistry is so divergent to what they're saying. I have a lot of practice with knowing that my chemistry doesn't tell the truth a great deal of the time. So there's a great many moments of my life. I would say the majority of my life is proceeding with what I'm hearing in my channel rather than what I'm feeling in the body, which I know is really different than how a lot of people work with intuition. Intuition has a lot less to do with feeling it than I think we give it credit for. I think for those of us who might have OCD, might like whatever, like I often feel like something is wrong when it's precisely right. I often. So intuition's very helpful for me in that way. Yeah, I hate to not have like a sugar-coated dovetail on that, but it definitely has made it so that it's a different container now. It's very different. I'm learning, proceeding with different structures and different things in place. And I have absolutely, even though my child's only 4, have had the experience of like, which a lot of parents talk about, especially mothers. I have a feeling something's going on with my kid, and I can't tell you why, but I know. And and most of the time I'm right. And some of the time I'm not, but it's mostly right. But I don't think that any of that is necessarily a problem. It's made me feel like very humble in the face of, because I'm still getting clear downloads, but the way that I'm tuning in, the capacity I have, the limited amount of space and time, I think is very humbling and has actually made me a little bit of a better intuition teacher, because I think it has made me be like, oh yeah, some people just don't have any time. They have no space. And how does someone approach this if they've never had practice now? Like it's yeah, I don't know. It's been very interesting. I still feel them, but it's a lot harder now to make the time.
Yeah, and there's a lot less space to doubt too what's coming through. I'm like, I just can't even, don't have time.
That's it.
Guess that I just need to write the thing. I just need to
I just have to do
record the podcast. You just have to do it. And so in that way, it's like a training ground of like, girl, you just don't have time even to like doubt this right now. You just
the perfectionism,
let it flow, see what
gone.
happens. Yes.
Spending a week tuning in about like the right name. I'm like, this is the name. It's got to come out now. Like it still doesn't, if it doesn't feel wrong, it's just really different.
It's really different. And I'm really so glad you brought in the chemistry piece too, because I mean, that was so huge for me postpartum. I had pretty gnarly postpartum OCD and depression and anxiety. And like, I just remember being like, oh, wow, I am so humbled right now by like what my brain is doing. what I'm having to encounter. And it did point me towards like lifelong patterns I had always had. I just had a lot more space and time to kind of just like
Same.
manage them, And I think that, looking back now, I wouldn't change anything about my intuitive journey, but I look back on myself having done all these intuitive readings with parents. Now that I am a parent, I was like,
I understand.
what
The fuck?
what?
Yeah.
I had no idea. Like, like I'm sure
Yeah.
I said things that were helpful, but I think there's this reality in which you cannot know until you know. And to me, that's part of the goal of like lived life experience. And I think why I believe as a species, we are built to have grandmothers and matriarchs and elders who have gone through this initiation leading us, because we have been through all this, because we have like gone through the fire. We have experienced these like primary life experiences, and obviously having a child is one of the biggest life experiences you could possibly have. And so I really want to say that I appreciate you so much for being honest about that, because I think a lot of people are like, what is wrong with me? And I've had people even reflect back to me like, you just seem like you had a child and just everything just kept expanding and like you just, it's not a problem. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like it's been such a journey, And so it's like, God, it's just the honesty around that feels so big. And I'm curious, we have a tiny little bit of an overlap here. My book came out when my child was 5 months old. So I wasn't writing it, but I did come out when she was very young. And that was a whole thing for me, very challenging in my nervous system. And I'm curious for you, you wrote your book during these early years. And
I did.
Yeah, so I'm just to bring it back to the book, I'm curious, like, what was that experience like? And at the same time, you're also, running your podcast, you do brilliant one-on-one intuitive readings with people. And so, yeah, I'm curious, like, how that interwove with everything in such a big transitional moment.
Well, I mean, I have to say, like, and I think I'm remiss in not, this is the one piece that is very important that I didn't bring, which is, even though intuition has gotten harder to sort of make space for in the way that I used to, having my child, becoming a mother, and her presence on this planet has shifted me in ways that are more important than I could ever say. And it's my favorite job and the job I love to do most. And she is my favorite person. I love being a parent. And it has immeasurably improved my life in every way. But the process of having a baby has destroyed my hormonal and nervous system well-being. Not my child's fault at all. So it was already a tenuous situation to begin with, to be honest. So it was a bold move on my part. Okay, I know that sometimes people say this and I'm like, ugh, but I don't totally remember how I did it. I know that it happened, and then all of a sudden the book was finished. And the whole time in the year I wrote it, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. This is impossible. I can't do it. This was why there was a lot of grief around, like, why didn't this happen before my daughter was born? Like, I was there. I was ready. Like, where was everyone? I was ready to go. But it was exactly the right time. It really, really was. I'm grateful for the timing. I am. It was wild. It really did take the cobbling together of the village that we had at the time, like, without my partner, without our nanny, who is now like a beloved occasional babysitter, but who was coming 3 days a week at that time. We didn't have anybody else. I don't know how we would have done it. I just really don't. So, yeah, it was a little bit, I think, like how I imagine having another baby would be. There was a lot of, like, I was awake at all hours doing it. There was a lot of writing and editing after she went to bed. I don't know how we do it, but it's happening. That's the way that I look at it. Like, I'm not quite sure how that's happening, but There were many times, even though I was like, I just can't understand why this didn't happen a little earlier, in ways that are both kind of known to me and also not known to me. There's no way I could have ever written this book without becoming a mother. No way could I have done that. And my work has changed since becoming a mother. The structure, the container, how it's run has radically changed. Even though it all, I think, looks the same to a certain extent, it's totally different. So that was all because I just couldn't devote the same time and energy that I used to devote before. So the structure had to change. And yeah, it was very magical, very powerful, and also a grind. A grind.
Yeah,
And
it's both.
Yeah. My daughter has been a really steady, reliable sleeper since she was born.
Such
I
a
know
gift.
the highest.
You've been gifted.
I know. With all of my friends who had colicky children who didn't sleep, like I used to, when they'd talk about it, just be like, I'm witnessing you. I'm just hearing that. I'll never complain ever. Can't complain, won't complain.
You can still complain. You're allowed. You're still allowed.
Yeah, that's true. I am, but also it's a whole different ball game. And there was I just had to be very economical. Like when she napped, I was like, okay, like I'm going to try my best to do what I can do. So I think a lot about like if I ever wrote another book, like I think you and I talked about this. Like I think it would take years. Like I don't know how I would do it now. There's no nap and the days are much longer than they used to be now, actually, than when she was younger. But yeah, it was wild.
I think too, on like your whole body of work and how you had built so much before having a child. And then this book is like, it's a monument. It's so much that you've built, And so it's like you had this huge foundation and then you had this big initiation that, made you the person really who could bring this book into form in a way that's just going to speak to even more people and help even more people. And so I just thank you for writing the book. Thank you to your partner and your nanny and all the systems
everybody
that supported you to make that possible, because I really mean it that I think this book like needs to be on everyone's shelf, because the way that you talk about relating to intuition and to the cards and to this practice, it's so life-giving. And that's really what we need right now. So I just want to close with this question, and you can just let roll whatever wants to roll here. But I know we're living through like such an intense, rapidly changing time right now. I mean, so much. And your intuition, what you pull through, your channel and the ways that you are, like it's such a generous guidepost. And I love tuning into your podcasts. I love listening or reading your Substack. And so just as like see what flows through, Lindsay, but I'm curious, like from your perspective, for where we are right now collectively, what are we being asked to anchor into as we move through this time?
The word that comes to mind is collaboration, I think. There's a very interesting dance going on right now, which makes sense because it's a Wheel of Fortune year. And Wheel of Fortune it's interesting, like it's tricky. There's a little bit that Wheel of Fortune asks of us where I think in some, like on a certain level, Wheel of Fortune says, if you do the work and if you prepare, you'll meet the moment. And some of the quote hard work is not stepping our foot on the gas pedal until the light turns green, which is tremendous in what it asks of us. So I think in some ways there's a sense of, I want to do something. I want to change this. I want to go forward. And for a number of reasons, many of us feel like I just don't think I can, or I'm not quite able to in the way that I'd want to. So the collaboration feels like a little bit of a collaboration with life with the greater forces, with the overall spiral of life, like not pressing and revving before that light turns green. But then when it does, to actually be bold and brave enough to go, okay, like I'm willing to go. I'm willing to move with this. So it's a very interesting time. I think collaboration has a lot of different meanings. And I'm noting for myself, now that we're 4 months in at the recording of this podcast anyway, I'm noting like, oh, for me, some of the work that I have to do while the light is red is a little bit around myself and a little bit more like cleaning my own house in terms of how I am tending to myself right now in this season. But for some people, it's totally different. So I think that collaboration process of, okay, you know, I'm willing to look at this. I'm willing to, the last thing I'll say about this is Wheel of Fortune, which again, 2026 is a Wheel of Fortune year. Wheel of Fortune seems like it's such a big mover and a shaker, and it is, but only in certain moments. There's a great deal of the time when we work with Wheel of Fortune where that larger wheel is kind of turning. We don't know quite how it's turning and what way it's turning, the direction it's going in, and we're not really being called upon to do anything. And one thing that we can do is just look around and be like, oh yeah, I have to take that teacup to the sink. So I'll do that. I got to chop apples for my child and I'll do that. Like there is very much a literally chop wood, carry water aspect to this year that I think is really strange with regard to all of the enormity of what's going on and how disempowered so many of us feel. So collectively, an anchor is whatever the teacup is on your table that maybe you're telling yourself is like, who even cares about the teacup? Like there's so much going on. I actually think it starts with the teacup. And that feels like a collaboration of sorts to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And it's like bringing in this agency piece, right? Like how do we actually have like fruitful collaboration? Well, we need to be in our agency, and that other force also needs to be in their agency. And it's like recognizing the places we have agency of that chop wood, carry water kind of deal. Like this is what we're here for, you know, and this,
yes.
and this is what like gives us that ability to be in that collaboration or in that co-creation and co-creating like what we want to see unfold next, what we want to give our energy toward. It's what we want to see unfolding. So I love that as an anchor. Thank you so much for just the anchor that you are in this world, Lindsay, and the anchor that this book is and this deck. I'm like so excited to get my hands on this deck. So I'm curious for folks who want to go deeper, want to learn more, want to order or pre-order your book. Where do people find you?
So first and foremost, happy to share. First and foremost, just want to shout out and give ample due and respect to the illustrator of these cards,
please.
Chelsea Granger, the luminous, incredible Chelsea Granger, who concepts are mine, but illustrations are Chelsea's, and just want to fully acknowledge this deck. This book would never be what it is without her illustrations, and she's incredible. And I highly recommend everybody support her work outside of this because she's remarkable. Her book about grief and loss called So Many Ways to Draw a Ghost is like my favorite book on grief. I love it. So that said, where people can find me is lindsaymack.com. All of the links to all of my work can be found there. I write a Substack newsletter called No Bad Cards, and you can find that again on lindsaymack.com or by going to Substack and searching for it. I have a lovely membership that I teach all of the fundamentals and foundations, just simply called the Soul Tarot membership. I love doing that and I have trainings and offerings. And I'm pretty sure you can order the deck and the book anywhere in the world, wherever you get your books.
Awesome. Awesome,
Thank you
Lindsay.
so
Well,
much.
thank you so much for being here. This has really been such a delight. I'm so excited for you and for everyone who's going to be getting this book. Highly, highly recommend. I also love your Substack. It's just, you're so
Thank
generous
you.
with everything that you share, and you've shared so generously with us today, Lindsay. So thank you so, so much for being here.
Thank you.